I think once I started to really wrap my head around that there was something truly going on for him, I just started researching like mad and looking at things like ADD and autism kept coming up for me. And so eventually I knew, before we got the diagnosis, I knew that we were going to get the diagnosis. Like, the process takes quite a long time. It took us 6 months. But in very early days of that process, I knew. And so I guess this is another piece of my story, is that one of the things that I did was read every book I could find. And the books on treatment that were in line with developmental type approaches, so RDI, of which is one, totally resonated with me. And that was the approach that I wanted to do in my gut. I got talked out of that by so-called, I shouldn't say that they're experts, but they're experts within a specific realm and obviously know what they know, but they don't. Any expert is bounded by what they know. They don't know what they don't know. And so I ended up taking a different path than what my gut told me, and that's something, I don't know if I would say I regret it, but it's a message that I put out there for other parents, that your gut is very important in decision making. Parents don't make good therapists. And that the primary evidence-based approach was something called verbal behavior analysis, or IBI or ABA. There's a number of different words for it, but essentially it's a behavioral approach. And so we went down that path, and it wasn't all bad by any means. We were in that program for about a year and a half. We had wonderful, lovely therapists come to our home every morning for a few hours and work with my son. And he was learning things like his numbers and his letters. And we were excited about that. And at the same time, I still wasn't able to sit down and do something with him. Like, I couldn't sit down and do a puzzle with him. He would run away.
When you talk about a behavioral approach, what does that mean?
Essentially, they would encourage him to participate in something by rewarding him with something. So TV time, for example. So first you come do this activity, then you get TV time, like over and over and over again within a 3-hour session. Sometimes they would use things like candy as a incentive. Basically, the idea is externally motivating him to do the things that he wasn't intrinsically motivated to do himself.
There's so much to be said about that, and that it does develop could be a large skill base for these children, but without the true everyday life experience to help them develop the motivations to want to function in more dynamic and distracting environments, it does not translate well to real world functioning. It can be very difficult. I think that it's more rare for a child to develop the social nuances and the know-how in order to be able to relate to people as we are required to do in the 21st century. No longer is it about what you know. We can Google anything. And so it's really more about how you problem solve and how you relate to other people that is going to translate to true world success. And so doing tabletop activities and developing and having a program that focuses on skill acquisition, it is going to have some shortcomings.
So what happened, Carol? What moved you to the next step? Because you didn't stay there.
No.
So what did you do next?
I started noticing, I guess, the things that Lisa was just describing. So my whole experience with autism and parenting, it started to lead me to get really clear on, what do I want for this child? Like, do I want him to know his numbers? Is that what I want to spend 3 hours a day on? And I kept coming back to, I want to have a relationship with this kid. I want to be able to connect with him and do things with him. And again, after a year and a half, I still I still felt like I didn't have that. So that was one big piece for me. The second piece was I was really involved in his program. Probably drove everyone crazy. It's just my nature, I guess. But I would see the activities that were presented, and I kept having this question come up for me, like, don't you need to problem solve to be able to figure that out? Like, does it, he would be memorizing sequences, for example, and I kept thinking, in the real world, don't you have to problem solve to figure out how to get which comes first, your boots or your hat or your coat? You need to think, right? And so I would ask those types of questions, and I wasn't getting the answers that really resonated for me, and I was becoming clearer and clearer that these were my priorities, being able to connect with him and having a little person that could problem solve and think for himself.